It isn't about what happens to us. Life's about what we do about what happens to us. The notion of being solutions oriented, trusting and believing that there's a plan and that things can and will get better is a critical piece of hope. The power of the shared experience is transformation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Stephanie Marie, and I'm on a mission to spread hope, sharing people's stories to encourage, inspire, and empower you. Today, I am so fortunate to welcome Aaron Taylor, who is a college football Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, CBS Sports football analyst, and the founder of Elite Mentals, a solutions-based social change initiative focused on demystifying and destigmatizing mental wellness, and the host of the podcast MindFlex. I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Taylor when he gave a speech at Pace University a little while ago, and I still remember the way he told his story with such compassion. His desire to share everything he's learned along the way is truly inspiring, and I know people left that room with a newfound perspective. So I'm so happy he's sharing his story with us today. And so, without further ado, let's begin. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Taylor. This is a really full circle moment. I got to watch you do your inspirational interviews on the Radical Hope Foundation as I was a guide for the past 4 years. And I got to meet you at Pace University when you came and did your speech. I remember you speaking with really such conviction and compassion. You really strive to share your story with people. So having you here today is such a full circle moment. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. It's an honor.
I'd like to start by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What inspired you to become a mental health and brain health advocate, really? And also, what do you wish people knew when it comes to mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, that's a great opener question. I think for me, I got a lot of making up to do for my 20s and 30s when my decision making wasn't so good. So, kind of the advocacy that I do, and I say that tongue in cheek, obviously, is to give back and to not make it so that people have to wait till they're in their late 40s like I was to really start to wrap their heads around the fact that we can feel and perform better in as little as 5 minutes by doing things on a daily basis. And sometimes we need to add things to the mix. Sometimes we need to take things away, but it is largely within our control. So the way that I earned my right to, or curiosity to learn about that was, a childhood full of challenges, just like a lot of people had. My parents were divorced at 2. At 5, there was some sexual abuse and physical abuse. At 8, there was some abandonment. We moved a lot as a kid. I was a latchkey kid, single parent. My mom was a pediatric ICU nurse and worked really hard, but, I kind of grew up pretty independent, and I was biracial. So I never felt black enough. I never felt white enough. I felt too black. I felt too white, and just never really felt like I had my people and needed to fit in or wanted to. So that's really what drove a lot of my decision making early on. So that resulted in a lot of drug and alcohol use in my teens. I got kicked out of the house, and kind of my come to Jesus moment was when I came back after spending a week on my floor, or on the floor sleeping, on my buddy's floor, with his underwear and socks as a pillow. I was like, this isn't what I want to do. So I went home, and football kind of entered the picture. And once I was clear on what I wanted to do and I started to channel my efforts, the invisible doors started to open. As a result of those things that happened to me early on and the messages that I received about not being good enough, about being a piece of crap and not lovable, and all those negative things that, a 5 and an 8-year-old can, only deduce, that was the best that I could come up with for most of my life. And what drove me as a professional athlete was to prove that voice and all those people wrong. And if I just made enough money, or just, hooked up with enough pretty girls, and just was the life of the party so many times, that all those superficial external things, if I could just have enough of that, then I wouldn't have to feel the way that I feel. And what I realized, 28, when I was single, retired, financially independent, had a Super Bowl ring, and had all those external things, that it still didn't fill me up. So if stuff and things wasn't the answer, there had to be more. And what was that? So that started a lifelong journey for me of kind of putting my fingers into my chest and cracking things open and taking a look, because the lowest common denominator of all of the terrible things that had happened to me in my life, and all the bad decisions and circumstances that I found myself in, had a lot to do with me. And not initially when I was young, but certainly as I was older. What I'll finish with here is that at 52, what I realize now and wished I had known at an earlier age is that it isn't about what happens to us. Life's about what we do about what happens to us. So I've been pretty solutions oriented for the last 20 plus years, and I just enjoy sharing some of the things that work for me and other people.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it's when I heard your story when you came to Pace, it's really heartbreaking to hear. But when I see you before me, when you see you before this crowd, you really are just like this beacon of hope, like this beacon of light. You make people feel like they're not alone, like they can get through this, they can keep going. You make people feel like they're not left out. Thank you for being that hope. I know you speak a lot about hope, and we're going to talk about it today. But really, what I think you're a great example of hope. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's hard
Yeah,
to
appreciate it,
share, and
Stephanie.
you're so open about your story. And I don't take that for granted because that's so personal. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And what I'll say is, like, saying the quiet part out loud, like going in and scrubbing out those wounds. Like
Mhm.
I use the analogy like as babies, we're born flawless with this skin that doesn't have any blemishes, and then some sort of whack happens, right? For me, 5 and 8 with the sexual abuse, divorce at 2, what I knew as stability and consistency, that all kind of eroded. There were people coming in and out of the house, like very early on, this flawless skin, to use an analogy, I started getting this rash and this rash of uncomfortability that the world would give me. So as I got older, I didn't know what to do about the rash. So I just wrapped it up in gauze, and looked like this big mummy that was wrapped in all this stuff. Because anytime anybody came close to touching any one of those wounds, it hurt. So I didn't want to hurt. So I wrapped it with girls and drinking and success and embellishment and sports and all these different things. And it was ineffective. I learned that. I would just went through at 28, having all the things on paper and all the boxes checked of the American dream, and I was still empty inside and still, in a lot of pain and angry, honestly, because I didn't like feeling weak and vulnerable. So, and I think a lot of men do this, we mask our fear with anger, feel strong and powerful. So for the last 20 plus years, I've been slowly unwrapping that gauze, cleaning and scrubbing out those wounds, and it stings a little bit. But after a while, the air hits it, it heals. I can see the scars, but it no longer hurts to the touch. So when I'm ready, I just pull it back a little bit further, scrub that part out, and then it no longer hurts to the touch. Well, you do that year after year, therapy session after therapy session, meditation after meditation, yoga after yoga, amends after amends, recovery meeting after recovery meeting over decades. Then eventually you learn to talk about these things, and they're just anecdotal data points. They don't have the hold and the control and the power over me that they once did. Now, where I have to be careful is not to embellish my story or to, make it more than it is, but just to let it be the neutral event that happened that was one of many events. And again, life isn't about what happens to us, it's about what we do about what happens to us. And as we will get into hope, hope is a verb, it requires action. And that's the consistency for me, is that while all these things were going on, there was this willingness to do something about that I think has allowed me to navigate the journey of a childhood that a lot of people experience, but some may not handle as well as I've been lucky.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. One thing that I remember you said during one of your interviews was that adversity doesn't create character, it reveals it. Can you talk a little bit about that? That quote has really stuck with me that you mentioned.
Yeah, you kind of are who you are. And the Navy SEALs have a saying is that, you don't rise to the occasion, you descend to the lowest level of your preparation. But like when things are moving fast, all you have left is who you are. You can't wear the mask anymore. You can't embellish. So my experience has been, and that quote really resonated for me, and I didn't make it up. I don't even remember where I heard it, but as I've looked back and reflected, like the deepest, darkest times in my life, it was like, that's who I was, the puddle in the middle of the floor that was raw and vulnerable and had no idea how I was going to get myself out of that jam, how I was going to keep going, how it would ever get better. That's who I was. So the adversity created character as it was practice for the skills of resilience. But I had to be willing to do the things necessary to get myself out. And for that, I'm eternally grateful, because that's a gift I was given. That, fall down 10,000 times, get up 10,001, that whole piece of find a way to get it done, keep moving forward, no matter what. Do it one breath at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, one class at a time, one practice at a time, one job interview at a time. Do the next indicated step. So, adversity doesn't create character, it reveals it, is more, I believe, a statement about our values and who we are intrinsically. I do believe that adversity can harden us. It can callous us in a positive way to make us more resilient as we become conditioned and develop the positive coping strategies to deal with negativity, that it can work in that way. But that statement in particular was, at the end of the day, we are who we are. And if we don't like who we are, we don't like what it is we see when we look in the mirror, we can do something about it.
And I want to also go back to, what is something you wish more people knew when it comes to their mental and emotional well-being?
That our life experience is something that we can largely control, that how we experience life 5 years, 5 months, 5 minutes from right now is something that we can choose. But in order for us to do that, we have to change the way that we think. And one of the things that many of us have to do is to stop the negativity loops, to stop the negative coping strategies, to implement and begin to change our habits around sleep and our health, mental health hygiene, what we do in our morning, what our morning routines look like, what the tough decisions we have to make around family and setting boundaries and around our friends, and to stop making excuses and making it about them or the world, because we don't see the world as it is. We see it the way that we are. And I've got a million examples I can share of how I've learned that to be true for myself. So our life experience is something that we can control, and we have to change the way that we think. We have to be willing to step into fear. We have to be willing to ask for help. We have to be willing to sit uncomfortable and be in that ridiculously excruciating, painful place of I don't know. For me, that's really hard, to sit in a place of not knowing what's going to happen next. But again, those are skills that can be learned just like any other skill. And we have to take control of the wheel instead of hoping the car drives itself to a better place. We have to navigate our own lives. And I just think many of us don't know how to do that, or that it's even possible. And that's really at the basis of what it is I try to communicate and help people understand.
Definitely. And, you have a really powerful motto for your mental health organization called Elite Mentals. You call it an act of rebellion against hopelessness. Now, kind of going back to what you said, it's really why I feel that you are such a voice for this generation, is because you are speaking to, I have gone through this. I have come out back stronger and better on the other side. And there's someone out there listening right now who's struggling with feelings of hopelessness. And you talk about an act of rebellion against hopelessness. So what's your message to them today?
Hope is a verb. It requires action. And the act of rebellion, the act for me is also a verb, right? The act is speaking out. It's speaking my truth. It's being solutions oriented instead of focusing on the problem. That notion of being solutions oriented, not fixing the blame, but looking at what the issues are, having a plan, attacking them, resourcing that plan, like it's all fixable. And sports taught me that. It doesn't seem like it is. There's been games you're in that are absolutely dire, but why do we love sports? Why do we love the huge upset, right? We're all these upsets waiting to happen where the odds are stacked against us. We just have to keep playing, keep trusting, keep executing the game plan the way it's designed to be, the way that we know what the standards and the fundamentals are. And who knows, good things may happen. So I truly believe that the world and the universe conspires on my behalf. I never used to feel that way. It's easier to feel that way on some days than others, but that's been a learned skill for me. I see problems really quickly in my life, and my wife and children hate it, so I've had to learn to be careful. And it's not that I don't want to acknowledge the good, It's that I want to make what's not good better. And that's football. That's the conditioning I got in sports. What did we do well? What can we work on? The stuff we do well, good. We work on it. We should do it well. What can we work on? So, gosh, I'm rambling a little bit here, but the notion of being solutions oriented, trusting and believing that there's a plan and that things can and will get better is a critical piece of hope. And that involves belief. There's a faith piece in there. But at the end of the day, it's about action. We can't think ourselves to feeling better. We can't solve the problem with the same mechanism that creates the problem. But we can fight fire with fire. So that takes effort to record affirmations onto my phone that I listen to, that is my voice telling me the other side of the reality to counteract that negative Nelly, what I call Ernie, my alter ego, because Ernie's up there always trying to jack stuff up, man. He's negative, he's critical, he's doubtful, he gets afraid, and I got to put him in his cage. And one of the ways that I do that, playfully and as an analogy, is with affirmations. Affirmations remind me of the higher truth of myself and what's also true. So on those days when I'm not feeling good, I fight fire with fire. Those negative thoughts, 70 to 90,000 a day that we have that we're not even conscious of, I know I got 50 to 80 that are going to be positive. And more times than not, that'll trigger a cycle of positivity where I get out of that rut that's so deep in my brain and hop back out and can be pleasant with the people that I encounter at the grocery store.
Yeah. That's so interesting because, I studied psychology and I found it so interesting when I learned how our brains were more sensitive and in tune with the negative than the positive. So let's say if we hear something positive, we're like, oh yeah, that's great. But when we hear the negative, it dwells on us. It can consume us. We're more, what's the word? We're more we're more predisposed to let that negative kind of consume us more so than the positive kind of uplift us more so. So I found that really, really interesting. So we have to be conscious about it, really make that effort to, as you're saying, to really combat that and make it like a conscious daily effort, a daily habit. So that's really interesting.
It is, Stephanie. And one of the unlocks for me and what's important for people to know is that our brains do that to protect us.
Yeah.
We have to be focused on the negative. That's what kept us safe. That's what kept us alive as we evolutionarily evolved. If we didn't remember or we weren't focused on danger and you got a broken ankle 2,000 years ago, that was a death sentence. Like the tribe moved on and you were left to take care of yourself. Well, that wasn't okay. So if you walked by the bush and there was some rustling and there was an animal that jumped out and tried to get you and you barely got away and were able to kill it, every time you heard a bush rustle from then on out, you're going to be hyper in tune to what that is because you remembered what happened last time. So fast forward to modern day society when we got bushes rustling all over the place as we scroll and images and impressions coming at us. It's bananas out there right now. So our brains are focusing at a rate and a speed we've never had to, in a rate and speed they've never evolved quickly enough to be able to discern all this information. You add social media to that, where the algorithm rewards the most extreme and polarizing thoughts, which tend to be negative. And my goodness, it's amazing that any of us can be positive or have a good day. So don't criticize yourself for being critical. Understand that that's your brain's mechanism to help keep you safe. But no different than trying to listen to music on records or 8-tracks. Yes, those worked and were great at the time, but there are better, more efficient ways to enjoy music now. And we have the ability to change how we enjoy the groups and bands and music that we listen to. We can change how we experience that, but it takes work and it takes practice and it takes habits. And it's one that's been really hard for me to break, and it hasn't happened quickly. But man, it's happening. And I have better interactions with my family and friends, and I'm better at work as a result. I don't get as anxious when I'm on air. I'm more confident. I'm not fishing for compliments, which is something I've struggled with. And all of that is a function of me rewiring my brain. And a good way to remember that is how we think and feel isn't our fault. It's just our default. But we can change that.
I love that. I love that. And I think, like you said, our brains are wired for this. It's a survival mechanism, like that fight or flight. Our bodies are having that same reaction, that same fight or flight response, but more frequently now. So that's why it's so important to do these, daily wellness habits that you speak of, because we need to like rewire our brains in that sense to calm down. Another thing you speak about is building confidence. And so I'd like to speak about that. How do you think people can build greater confidence?
Repetition. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Most things are skills. Confidence comes from competence, and that doesn't happen by itself. I can't try something new. And this goes back in the, I think it's Carol Dweck with, growth and fixed
Yes.
mindset and the research that she found. I'm a
Yes.
very fixed mind, very fixed, like tragically so. Yet I have curiosity in other areas that is interesting, and I've learned to use to help me navigate those things that I'm self-conscious about and don't have confidence in. So curiosity is a really important unlock as it relates to confidence. So for example, if I'm going to want to cook a new recipe, or if I have to read teleprompter, on a TV show because the host suddenly can't do it, that's not my skill set. It's quite a bit harder than people think, and we all laugh at ourselves because none of us are good at it except the people that are good at it. Instead of the thought that would be, man, I hope I don't screw this up because it's hard, is I wonder what would happen if I had fun with this and just went for it, right? Just that little cue right there decreases the anxiety, opens the door for it going well. It introduces curiosity, which for me is playful. And again, that's a habit because that's not my first thought usually, but if I can make it my second or my third, and I'll even negate the thought, like cancel. Man, I hope I don't blow this up. You know what? I wonder what would happen if this went well. What if I crushed this today? What if I read these words and took a deep breath and read slower than I think I need to? Because when we want to bring energy, we talk faster, but that's when we step over and misread the words. What if I slowed down and had fun with this and did it my way and blah, 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 blah. So curiosity is a key to unlocking the fear that helps the lack of confidence and the insecurity to be willing to do the reps necessary to build the competence that will precede the confidence.
I love that with the growth mindset. I love that because I think people think, they see people that are confident and they think, oh, wow, well, if I start, I'm going to be confident. It's not something that happens overnight. You're not going to walk into something and be confident. So in the sense of the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, is growth mindset people think, well, this intelligence, my skills, my strengths, my confidence is going to grow over time the more that I keep doing it. And as you said, the more you keep challenging yourself, putting yourself in the right position, and it's going to grow over time. So give yourself that time and that grace, because it will happen. It's a work in progress.
And I'll say this, Stephanie, I think a huge unlock for me
Mm-hmm.
on air from my second career that I'm now 16 years in, is shifting the focus from killing it, meaning doing really well this show, to having fun.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
simple shift that if you're watching me, you don't notice anything. But internally, it goes from this to that.
Yes.
Go from, I'm going to kill this show. I'm going to say this. I'm going to do that. That was so much pressure that
Yes.
when it went well, it would go well. But when it wouldn't, I would wilt and it'd be hard for me to recover. Now,
Mm-hmm.
watching at home, you couldn't really tell. But
Mm-hmm.
what that would do is it would immediately take the salt out of this delicious pot of gumbo. And you'd be like, now it's just
Mm-hmm.
bland. When I made the shift to doing well, to having fun, invisible doors started to open.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cannot have fun if I'm not doing my job well. Now, that didn't mean that I prepared any less or worked less hard. It meant that I worked differently hard. I would research all the information. I would study. I'd watch game film. I'd make the phone calls that I always did. But instead of trying to be 60 Minutes, Aaron Taylor, where I'm trying to break the code, instead, I was, how am I going to start this conversation with, a funny joke, or asking them about their family? I read that they played ping pong, and I think I'm a pretty good ping pong player. And just shifting the intent of what it is I was doing from success to enjoyment. That alone has allowed me to be so much more successful than I ever thought. And I really feel like I had to do it wrong so many years. Excuse me. And here's another catch. Instead of going good or bad, right or wrong, it's efficient or inefficient. I've replaced those words. So I almost had to do it wrong for 30 years to figure out how to do it right these last, 20, probably been more like 50. I did it inefficiently for 50 plus years. And for the last couple years, I've really started to find efficient ways to apply the work and the passion that I have. And that's shifting the focus and the intent of what I'm doing from doing well to enjoying it.
And like you said, in that process, you actually end up being more successful because you're not so focused on, oh, well, I can't fail. Because when you're so focused on that, or I can't make mistakes, then you're actually avoiding yourself from
Yep.
learning along the way and growing. So that's really interesting. Thank you so much for saying that. I really love that. That's awesome. I want to talk about your podcast that you started last year, Mindflex, explores the intersections of mindset, performance, and well-being. What inspired you to launch that podcast, and what lessons that you shared on there that resonated the most with you that you'd like to bring into today?
Yeah, my wife and I have been married, 16 years together, almost 20. And, we've got a great marriage. She's, the one. There's no eject button. We, God willing, will be married till the day that we die, but we're married. So we bump heads, and she's a former athlete, and she's strong-willed and opinionated. And, we have our set of challenges just like any good marriage does. So we went to a retreat once through the Gottman Institute, and they were
Oh,
a married
yes.
pair of therapists,
Yes, I
and
remember learning of them.
they had a podcast called Small Things Often.
Hmm.
And what their research showed, and they studied marriages that lasted 40 or more
Hmm.
years, they interviewed them, and they found that what made those marriages work weren't the big things. It
Hmm.
was doing little things often. So hence Small Things Often. That was the name of the podcast. So my wife and I would go for walks. We'd pick an episode based on subject matter that was shared responsibilities or communication or something that was specific to us. We never listened to all of them, but it was very prescriptive. And it was 3 to 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And it would lay out the situation and what people did. And here's something to try next time. And what most people don't understand is, and it had the woman that narrated had this really, engaging voice. And we'd listen to the episode, then go walk and then talk about it. And man, for 8 to 10 years consistently, we would go back and pull episodes out, and we'd listen to the same ones, a couple years apart because we forgot. But
Yes.
you have the recurring issues, and it was just this resource that we used that was timeless. It really helped our marriage. And on one of those walks, I said, "Man, I wonder if this model would work for student athletes and for performance and for mental health." And that started the whole journey. So I want to give them a lot of credit because they inspired me, but that was designed to be evergreen so student athletes and young people could go and pick out episodes that spoke to them or for them. But each episode is solutions oriented and offers things around body image, time management, how to set boundaries with friends and family, performance anxiety. There's some affirmations on there. There's some visualizations on there for pregame and just regular during the week to reduce anxiety. Things that student athletes through Radical Hope had reported to us that they struggled with. We created 30 episodes that were designed for people to prescriptively go and find something that just give them some ideas or some solutions with many of the things that most of us deal with.
And I love how they're like 5 to 8 minute episodes where you can just listen to it while you're eating breakfast or you're on the go. And it just gives you this boost of like energy.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I feel so like motivated and energized. So I really love that. It's like these little nuggets of wisdom to like carry you through. And that's so great. You were inspired by the Gottesman couple and their podcast. That's so awesome. I really love that.
Yeah.
And you bringing that into young people today. And I want to ask you, so, we talked a little bit about hope, but I want to ask you, what role has hope played in your journey so far, and how do you hold on to it today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of my why, not part of it, but a lot, yeah, my why is I've lost 13 and counting to completed suicide. And
Wow.
I say in counting because each year that passes, it seems something else happens, and another couple dozen more to deaths of despair with, drug addiction and overdose. And I'm just tired of losing people. And I'm tired of losing people prematurely. I'm tired of losing people unnecessarily. And this is the way that I fight back. This is how I'm an act of rebellion against hopelessness. And that's really at the key of what we find and what a lot of the research says is people don't want to die. They just want to stop hurting. They don't know how to stop hurting. They don't believe that the hurting will ever stop. So they make a permanent decision to what's usually a pretty temporary set of circumstances. So helping people to understand that, helping people to connect with people that feel like they do, that went through what they did, but also tried and did stuff that worked, that helped them feel better. This is the proverbial what it was like, what you did about it, what it's like now. That triumvirate that I've seen work so well in recovery is really the key to connection and hope. And it's important, though, and I've said it a couple times, that hope is a verb. It requires action. What the research has said, and there's many studies, is if you're on a desert island, per se, and you're focused on what's, how are you going to get off? Is this going to happen? And you keep looking forward to these certain things and hoping the boat is going to come and save you, you don't fare nearly as well as if you start to build a raft. And if you start to create a set of circumstances where you actively participate in what that's going to be like. Visualization and imagining that moment when you re-engage with your family and feeling what that's going to feel like unlocks incredible things, not only in our psyche, is what the research shows, but also cosmically, which I don't know if there's any science that can support it. It's just observational. But those are the sorts of things that it's critical for people to understand. I mean, there's been so many games I've been a part of that one play, one action that seemed so insignificant changed everything. But that's also been true in my life. And I think that that's also true in a lot of people's lives. So this notion of hope is a belief. And I got this from the book Arthur C. Brooks, Build the Life You Want. It was the opposite of optimism and hope. Optimism is a belief that things will somehow get better. Hope is a belief in actively participating in actions that will make things better. It's a belief that I can make things better. So that's where I got hope as a verb. It requires action. The optimism is that magically things will get better. Hope is there are things I can do to make things better. Where should I start? That's what I carry with me. That has innately been given to me. That's the gift of grace that I'm grateful for. That it's been that way since I've been a kid. And I don't know if that's out of necessity. I don't know if it's watching my mom, who was a perennial caregiver as a pediatric ICU nurse. She worked in hospice for 20 years. She was also a single parent and that had an only child that she had to raise by herself, and she found a way no matter what. I don't know where it comes from, but I've watched it over and over. So if you're out there and you're listening, and for those of us that have lost hope at times, the key to focus on is, if it were to get better, what would it need to look like? What's one thing I can do right now in the next 5 minutes that would be the beginning or a part of that process to create that outcome that I wanted? Yeah. Even that simple bit of inertia can put us in the right direction and end us up in a place we never thought possible. Because that's what I did. So I don't think that works. I know that it does, because that's what myself and many other people have done and continue to do on a daily basis to enjoy lives that they once thought unattainable.
And where do you think people could start? Because I know that starting can be the hardest part, really. So let's say someone has listened to this, they're struggling with those feelings of hopelessness. Let's say someone's struggling with anxiety and depression. We've seen a lot of loneliness. What would you recommend would be like the first step?
Yeah, for me, the question I would ask is, well, where are you connected? What are your touch points of connectedness? A lot of people feel alone because they isolate. I'm an isolator. I don't want anybody coming around. So a lot of times when I'm feeling lonely, It's because I've chosen to be isolated. I have people that reach out that I don't want to go out with. I get invited to dinners, or my wife gives bids for affection or to want to go to lunch, and I decline those. When I'm not feeling connected, it's because I've unplugged my lamp from this infinite supply of electricity that I've got innumerable outlets in my life to be able to plug into, but I'm holding the cord. The question would be, where are you connected, or where could you be connected? And what's one thing you could do to stay connected? The reality is, and the data suggests, as an example, that an abundance of people feel lonely and isolated. So there are support groups for that, where people can go and share about what it's like and why they feel lonely. They can hear from people, share when they felt that way, they did this, and then felt better. So if it worked for them, maybe it worked for me. You have an immediate group of people that you can relate to, and maybe they're people that you wouldn't ordinarily hang out with otherwise, but for that 1 hour sitting in a church basement or meeting wherever you're going to meet on campus, you can hear other people share your experience. And that's all I've witnessed for my 20 plus years in recovery, is that the power of the shared experience is transformational. What it was like, or what it is like, what you're doing about it, and what it's like now. But what you're doing about it is the action. It's the verb. That's where the hope gets designed. So at the very least, if you're feeling alone and isolated, ask yourself the question, where can I plug in? Who can I connect with? For me sometimes, and this sounds crazy, like I'll be in the grocery store and I'll just start talking if I'm feeling surly or angry or prickly. Like I make myself do some act of courtesy and kindness, because courtesy for me is the gateway to serenity. So I'll hold a door open. I'll return a cart for somebody in Costco because I'm so pissed because they're going 5 wide and I only got 17 minutes and I got to do my thing. So I'm being rude to people, and I'll catch myself, take a deep breath, and I'll do some act of kindness to snap me out of that. And lo and behold, I'll connect with somebody that I don't know their name. We'll maybe say 1 or 2 sentences to each other, but suddenly that human part of me that we're hardwired for gets fed. So there are a lot of ways to feel connected and connect as human beings that don't require going on a blind date or me sitting across from you at a table and talking or taking those invitations. But first thing first, put down the damn phone, right?
Yes.
Get outside. Go for a
Yes.
walk. If you don't feel connected with people, go feel connected with nature. Take your shoes and socks off and walk on the grass and feel the grass. Close your eyes and listen to birds. Tactily touch the grass, smell it. Just be present in that moment and connect with yourself. I think that's what so many of us struggle with. We don't feel connected internally, so we look to the external world to feel connected. And when they can't fill this void that's inside of us, then we sulk and we feel depressed and we feel discouraged, not realizing that we've got this hole inside of us, HOLE, but the answer and the solution to this is WHOLE. We have to become whole. So we have to fill that part of us that's missing. And that's on a deeper spiritual level than many are able to access or want to or believe in. I don't know. That's been my experience. And I think to some degree, however we fill it, when it was drugs and alcohol and fame and notoriety and decisions and relationships, when I was trying to fill my hole with that, it didn't work. So I didn't know what was in my best interest. I sat in circles with other people that felt like me, that were able to do something about it, that had different results and better and things that I wanted. I watched their lives. I wanted to laugh. Like, what's everybody laughing at? What's so funny? Like, how can you be so happy? And I learned, and they told me, and I did what they did, and I did what they suggested, and that whole became a combination of me and my higher power. And then all of a sudden, I didn't need as many things from other people. And lo and behold, when that need wasn't there, now I started feeling more connected and got more of what I wanted anyways. Understand that connection is the key to loneliness. And that sometimes first we have to connect with ourselves. And oftentimes we don't want to because there's bad stuff that's happened. Or we think we're bad. but go connect with your physical body, with your five senses. Take your shoes and socks off. Rub your hands in the sand. Smell pine needles or the grass. Listen, taste things, and just be present. And see if you can get connected there first to be able to stretch yourself and take incremental steps to be able to expand that connection first with yourself and then the outside world. And as a proverbial circle sitter, that was a great place for me to go. And my challenge was alcoholism. Grandfather, father, me. It's in our blood. One is too many, a thousand's never enough. And I didn't want to go into a circle and talk to a group of people. There are marriages and kids that have broken the cycles. It's the whole gamut of the beauty and the power of the human experience. And it's a resource that's available to everybody for however you're feeling, whatever you're going through. There's an app for that. There's a circle for that of people that are feeling like you. And sometimes just sharing your story out loud with somebody else who gets it is a great place to start to feel.
That's amazing. And that's what you're doing, really. And, I like this quote by Maya Angelou, who's like one of my favorite writers. She said, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And I really, believe that you make people feel like they're not alone, like you see them, you hear them, you understand them. So thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, for all the amazing advice. I learned so much. I really love the analogy of being whole in yourself. I really, really love that. So thank you so much for this conversation. Can you just tell me a little bit about what Elite Mentals, what the work you guys are doing there, and what's your mission, really?
Yeah, Elite Mentals was an activation to meet Black and brown people where they were at, to speak to them in a language that they understood, and that's through fashion, art, music, and technology. So we created some graphic art to be able to put on t-shirts was the pilot, to kind of play with that bridge between hip hop, street culture, and mental health wellness solutions. So there's a concept we have called Levitate, which comes from a Kendrick Lamar song that is really a shirt about meditation. So there's a QR code on there that you can scan. It takes you to a website and talks about, meditation. Now, this concept works, but it's in pilot phase. And we tested it. We had a sample group of 30 high school students, and it crushed. All it really is a hook to meet people where they're at, speak to them in a language that they understand. It would work with any music group, with any demographic, any population, because the art can be changed, but the information is the same. Meditation, it's yoga, it's cold tubs, which student athletes have access to because they're trying to get their legs back. But using intentional cold immersion therapy as an example, and this is part of the benefits of the program, is to help people to understand that that's a very safe way to practice stress. Your body responds as if it's fallen into a frozen lake or river. So your fight or flight kicks in, adrenaline, endorphins, your breathing starts to go, your heart rate starts to go. So if you can learn to put yourself in that environment, even if it's just a cold shower for the first 30 seconds before you warm it back up, what would happen to me is I go in, I can do hard things. I'm uncomfortable but safe. And I would learn to calm myself down through affirmations repeatedly over and over and over, so that after I practice, when I go out there into the real world and that unexpected phone call or that whack really happens, or I'm actually scared, I've used and developed the tools and the muscle through affirmation and positive statements to remind myself I can do hard things, that this feels uncomfortable, but I'm going to be okay. That can be practiced in a cold tub or in your shower just by turning the cold water on. And that's just not my opinion. That's what the science and the data say.
Yes. Yeah, I heard that.
Those were ways, and the way that we depicted that visually was, a big old dude in a cold tub with glasses, with an LA scene behind him, and it was cold chilling, right? He was cold chilling, but with a QR code, you scan it, you would learn what I just explained about intentional cold immersion. And it's just a way to bring the information and allow it to be more accessible. So that's Elite Mentals. The way that the logo is designed, ELITE Mentals. So it's Lit Mentals. There's a little play on words there, but that was for one target demographic that's underserved. But I've got ideas and concepts on how to serve all demographics. But the crux, and what I hope somebody's listening to this and has their own ideas, take that idea and run. I don't know what's going to solve this mental health crisis, but it's going to take all of us. So I just want to be a part of it. So if you've got ideas and you could do your version of elite mentals, knock yourself out. I'll give you any and everything that I learned in that process. But the key piece is to meet people where they're at and to speak to them in a language they already understand. If you can do that, you bridge the gap and you'll have them for a period of time to listen to the message that you're trying to send. And ours is just simply that your life experience is something that you can control and that there are things you can do to feel and perform better in as little as 5 minutes.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that. I love that, meeting people where they're at. I think that's the first step. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, for everything you've shared with us today, and for ultimately just sharing your story with people and really trying to meet people where they're at. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Stephanie, and I appreciate the fact that you had a desire to continue to stay involved in this work, that this is something that you feel good doing. Yeah. So whether this is what you ultimately end up doing or is a both and to whatever it is you do on a day-to-day basis, 9 to 5, so to speak, the world's better when people follow their passions, aren't tied to outcome, but are just willing to reach out. And because you did that, I was willing to take the time. This literally couldn't be any busier of a time of the year for me, but I chose to take the time because you're worth it. And because you made the time and are following your passions, I'm willing to support that. So
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you for doing it. You're worth it, and the world needs more of what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. That's so kind. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for coming on the podcast, for the work you're doing, sharing your story to motivate others. Follow Aaron Taylor at Aaron Taylor CFB, that stands for college football, and at elite_mentals on Instagram, and listen to Mindflex on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If this message has resonated with you, please be sure to like, share with a friend, subscribe for weekly updates, and leave a comment letting me know what has been your favorite part that Aaron Taylor has shared with us today. Thank you so much for listening, and have a fabulous day. Bye.